Donna Diana, we have this title character who is always fending off approaches from men. And Reznicek has provided the opera with a short but incredibly madcap overture. Most of it should be played lightly, even though there are very loud passages. There's almost a sense of constant mistaken identity and crazy goings-on in the fact that he has accents in the wrong place. So often when you hear this overture played, you get a very natural pulse of a pulse on the downbeat. But what in fact he wrote was there are all these accents in the wrong place and rests where you don't expect them. So really a lot of the comedy comes from his putting the right things where you don't expect them or the wrong things where you do. Janus, who looked simultaneously in retrospect and in prospect. Those are the names of the movements of Samuel Jones's piece. The first section, in fact, is an older composition, which for a while was a standalone work, and when he was asked to write something for the opening of Benaroya Hall, he decided to take this older work, which looked back, and pair it with a new movement that bespoke the joy, the anticipation of all of the great things that would soon be taking place in and at Benaroya Hall. So you've got this very wistful, backward-looking movement, and then a movement full of optimism and chorale sections and bell sounds. It's really one of the most beautiful and celebratory works I know by any composer written in the last several decades. Very, very pleased to be doing it. It's the first time that I've had a chance to conduct a work by Mr. Jones, and as of right now, he is planning on joining us for the last several rehearsals and at the performance. A great honor for us. Bruckner was a virtuoso organist, and long before he considered himself a professional composer, he was a church organist. He would sit for hours pouring out these improvised fantasies at the organ that were supposed to be like nothing else anyone had ever heard. He was musically sophisticated in the extreme. His musical sense, his sense of structure, his sense of being able to maintain tension over 15 or 30 or 60 or more minutes was amazing. This, coupled with the fact that in all other aspects of his life, he was unsophisticated in the ways of the world. He had very crude manners. He always dressed very shabbily. And people could not understand how this incredibly simple creature could write this music. I mean, that was the one side of him that was advanced to an almost frightening degree. I don't remember the exact details of the story, but I think that after years of having submitted himself to rigorous theoretical training, he finally felt that he was ready to undertake what was then considered the ultimate test, where 5 august professors from the local conservatory would sit there and put him through his paces. And he was flying through this exam, showing them that he could build a fugue at a moment's notice and construct a sonata. And finally, they gave him a theme or two, and they asked him to improvise on it. And he apparently sat down at the organ and came up with such a piece of music that these 5 graybeards just looked at each other in amazement, and the senior among them looked at his colleagues and he said, "He knows more than all of us put together." That kind of praise was, alas, slow in coming to Bruckner when he finally did embark on a career of primarily writing symphonies. He made the rather ingenuous mistake of publicly allying himself with his hero, Richard Wagner, at a time when you either loved Wagner or you loved Brahms. And all the Brahms lovers said, here's a new victim. And because he certainly didn't have the strength of character that Wagner did, he was a very easy target for their barbs. And in fact was a very lonely, miserable figure, frequently figuratively spat upon by Viennese musical society until finally the strength of his work managed to overcome the prejudices that were in the air for so long. For all of the strength of character exhibited in Bruckner's music, he was nonetheless incredibly insecure and so desperate for performances that if a conductor came along and said, can I cut these 4 bars? Sure, do it. And so scores were forever being mutilated, added to, but usually taken away from. And so it took a while for scholars to finally track down scores and parts that had not been mauled by well-meaning and or conductors with bigger egos than they should have had, who should have just been there to serve the composer. So there are now scholarly editions of all of Bruckner's symphonies very much as he wrote them. It's a wonderful work where you can certainly hear the influences of Beethoven, of Schubert. I think Schubert's spirit hovers very, very closely over the work. He was not yet ready to write a work quite as expansive as the more popular 4th or 7th symphonies. So it's a little more compact than some of the Bruckner that most audiences might be used to, but still a work of great breadth, of great depth. The slow movement is one of the most incredibly beautiful things you will ever hear. And the orchestra has really taken it to their hearts. After the first rehearsal, you could see a lot of very happy smiles. I suspect that just about everybody is identifying very strongly with it, particularly the brass, who would give their eye teeth to perform any Bruckner anytime, anywhere.